Hello friends. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about the Kotlin programming language. Now, first of all, question probably pops into your mind. Wait, what is Kotlin? Well, that's a good question and a good place to start. So I'll tell you, Kotlin is an open source, statically typed programming language that supports both object-oriented and functional programming. So the Kotlin programming language runs on the Java virtual machine that we typically call a JVM. Kotlin language provides syntax similar to languages such as Java, C#, Scala, but it takes its name from the Kotlin Island, which is a Russian island in the Gulf of Finland, in case you were wondering. Now, of course, we said that Kotlin is a static language, so wait a minute. What the heck is that? Were you even listening after I said static language? Yeah, that's kind of an odd term, huh? But it kind of gets your wheels spinning, too. So a static programming language is such that every variable type is declared from the very beginning. So that is when we define a string value, we write string at the very beginning. When we define a numeric value, we write types such as int, double, float at the very beginning of the variable. So therefore, variable types know what these types are even when the program isn't running yet. Okay, so all this means that while the program isn't running yet, if you've made a mistake, it'll warn you and wait for you to correct the mistake. So languages such as Kotlin, Java, C# can be given as examples of static programming languages. Also, there are dynamic programming languages that you might be familiar with. The dynamic programming languages will be languages in which the variable types are determined at program runtime. So when you create a variable, you do not need to specify the type of that variable, whether it's a string or an integer, whatever. So languages such as Python, JavaScript can be given as examples of these dynamic programming languages. Awesome. Glad we got out of the way. All right, so the Kotlin project was first started in 2010 as open source. So it's a completely free language, and its first official version, 1.0, was also released in February 2016. It's a long time, huh? But Kotlin was announced as an official Android development language at Google I/O 2017. That's why the Kotlin programming language became the third fully supported language for Android after Java and C++. So now, Kotlin is officially supported by Google for Android development, meaning Android documentation and tools are designed with Kotlin in mind. Good to know. So I would also like to mention one more thing. Kotlin is 100% interoperable with the Java programming language. And great care has been taken to ensure that your existing code base can properly interact with Kotlin. You can easily search Kotlin code from Java and Java code from Kotlin. This makes adoption much easier and lower risk. Now, there's also an automatic Java to Kotlin converter built into Android Studio, which makes it even easier to migrate existing code. All this means that if you already know the Java programming language, you can learn the Kotlin language, well, I would say a whole lot easier and faster. Now, it's okay if you don't know. You don't need to worry. In this course, I'm going to teach you Kotlin programming language step by step. All right, so what are we aiming at with this Kotlin programming language? Well, I'll tell you, by using the Kotlin programming language, you can do more with fewer lines of code. And that means the language using coding has a much simpler, more understandable structure. Commands are clearer. You can also compile your projects faster with Kotlin. So then wait, what can you do with Kotlin programming language? Well, in fact, you can develop web applications, desktop applications, and Android applications by using Kotlin. Of course, Kotlin is often used to develop Android applications. So in fact, there's a lot you can do. So in this course, we're going to learn how to develop Android applications using Kotlin. right, my friends. I think that covers what the heck Kotlin programming language is all about, how it's emerged, and some of the advantages of Kotlin. So we'll take a short break here if you want to. In our next lesson, in any event, we will give you some information about the Android ecosystem, which you're going to have to know first, okay? So I want to see you in the next lesson. So we'll start without wasting any more time, because we got to get to it. We got a lot of good stuff to do. All right, be quiet and tell me. You betcha. Android is an operating system designed for use on mobile devices. The Android operating system was originally created for use in digital cameras, but you didn't know that, did you? So the Android operating system is developed primarily for use now on smartphones and touch tablets by Android and Google. Google bought the Android company in 2005, and the Android operating system was released in 2008. Although Android is developed for smartphones and tablets today, it's still being used in Android televisions, smartwatches, Android Auto, and Android Wear devices. Android Auto is the car smart multimedia system, in case you weren't aware. So, Android operating system is used in more than 100 languages today. That's 5.22 billion people who are using a mobile phone today. And that equates to 66.6% of the world's total population. Also, more than 2 billion people use the Android operating system as of May 2017. Google Play has more than 2.8 million applications published. More than 6,000 applications are published on Google Play every day. More than 20 million application developers will be needed in the next few years. Yeah, I'm looking at you, right? So this means that you need to learn this Android application development really, well, I'd say kind of quickly, but thoroughly. But quickly. So I believe this course is going to be really good for your process, okay? So after this course, you will be a very good Android application developer. All right, well, at least a good one. Anyway, let's get going. So, another motivation factor. Let's talk a little bit about salary. I know you wonder how much your salary is going to be. I'll let you in on a little thing here. Junior Android developer salaries are more than $55,000 per year in the U.S. But I believe you're going to make more. Middle-level Android developer salaries more than $100,000. Senior-level Android developer salaries is about $130,000 U.S. dollars per annum, as they say. All right, wet your whistle a little bit. So in this lesson, I am giving you some information about the Android ecosystem. Hope it's useful. Hope it kind of gets you primed, because in the next lesson, we're going to do some setup that you're going to need to know in order to develop these applications using Kotlin. All right, so I want to see you in the next lesson. Elements that are common to almost all programming languages, and I think that if we all get on the same page about this, it's going to be very useful for you. So, I'm only going to talk about the basic meaning of most of these terms. In our course, we're also going to learn the detailed usage of the related terms whenever it comes up and appropriate. So, be ready. Let's get started. So, a package is an organized module of related interfaces and classes. Packages used to organize classes that belong to the same category or provide related functionality. Now, in object-oriented programming, a class refers to a set of related objects with common properties. So classes and the ability to create new classes render OOP a powerful and flexible programming model. So, for example, there might be a class called Shapes, which contains objects which are triangles, pentagons, squares, and circles. You follow? So that an object is a combination of related variables, constants, and other data structures which can be selected and manipulated together. An object can include shapes that appear on a screen or like the age of students in a school. Object-oriented programming, OOP. So this is a model defined by programmers that revolve around objects and data rather than actions and logic. Okay. In OOP, it's not only the data type of a data structure that's defined, but also the types of functions that can be applied to it. So through all this, the data structure becomes an object that consists of both data and functions. So languages that use OOP concepts are Java, Kotlin, Python, etc. A function is a block of code that can be referenced by name to run the code it contains. Argument, or arg, is a value that is passed into a command or a function. For example, if sqr is a routine or function that returns the square of a number, then sqr4 will return 16. Right? So here the value 4 is the argument, and similarly, if the edit is a function that edits a file, then in edit myFileText, well, you guessed it, myfile.txt is the argument. All right, my friends, here's a few of the terms that you're going to hear often in our course. So we'll take a short break here, and I'll see you in the next lesson. It's using the Kotlin programming language. Now for this, we will first install the JDK, or Java Development Kit. Now earlier, remember we said that this Kotlin language runs on the Java virtual machine. So therefore, in order to develop applications using Kotlin, we will need to install JDK onto our computer. Now before we move on to the JDK installation, I would like to briefly explain the concepts of a Java Development Kit that we refer to as JDK, a Java Virtual Machine, or JVM, and Java Runtime Environment, or JRE. So this Java Development Kit, it's a software development environment, and it's used to develop Java applications. This package contains all the tools that you need to develop with Java. If you want to develop and run applications, you will need to install JDK onto your machine. It actually includes Java Runtime Environment and other developmental tools. Development tools are things like compilers, Java debuggers, and other things that you'll learn. The JRE, or Java Runtime Environment. This is a software package that combines libraries, the Java virtual machine, and other components to run applications written in Java. So the JRE is the runtime portion of Java, and this is all you need to run it in your web browser. It includes Java Virtual Machine, or JVM, and libraries. So the Java Virtual Machine is a virtual machine that runs Java programs. So when we run the Java program, the Java compiler first compiles your Java code to bytecode. And you get this bytecode by compiling the .java files into .class files. .class files contain bytecode understood by the JVM. So in short, if you are a Java or Kotlin programmer, you will need the JDK to develop and run applications, and this package will also include the JRE and the JVM. Yeah, so there you go. That's a brief little overview about the JDK. So we'll move on to JDK installation. So first up, you just have to open your browser, and here I'm using Google Chrome, but I think you can use any browser you want. Don't let's get too extreme here. Anyway, now let's write download JDK in the search bar. So after pressing the Enter key, I'll just open the first of the results, namely the Java Standard Edition, or SE, Downloads Oracle Technology Network page. So if you notice, the most up-to-date version of Java is Java 16. Now if you do see another version here, don't worry about it. The JDK installation is the same in all versions. So you can successfully complete the JDK installation just by following the next steps. So I'll click on JDK download, and that's the link in the Oracle JDK section here. So this page opens. This is the Oracle JDK page. I want you to notice there's an important warning text here. Okay? Oracle JDK changed its license April 16, 2019. So in other words, while personal and development JDKs were free, those used for commercial purposes have become paid. So for that reason, Oracle offers us the Open JDK version, which is open source. So that's why I'm just clicking on the jdk.java.net link here. So from this page it opens, I'll choose JDK 16, which is the most up-to-date and ready-to-use version. Now from this page it opens, we can download the appropriate JDK for our computer. And as you can see, there are JDK installation files for Linux and Mac and Windows. Now my computer is operating with Windows 64-bit, so that's why I choose the zip option from here. And you can see that my download has started. I hope yours has too. So of course, depending on your internet speed, it could take some time to download. So I am just going to stop screen recording here, and then I'll come back when the download is complete, and we'll just continue where we left off. Happy downloading. All right, my friend, so my download is complete, so I'll continue by clicking on the arrow icon right here and select Show in Folder. All right, so now I'll need to extract this file here. Now, of course, you have to have a compression or decompression program on your computer to be able to do this. If not, you can always download it from the link that I've added right into the resources of this lesson. So I'll just right-click on the zip file and select Extract here. Right, so as you can see, we've obtained a JDK folder. Now we will move the JDK folder to the Java folder that we will create in the Program Files folder. So for this, I just cut JDK folder by pressing Ctrl-X on the keyboard. And let's open up Program Files by selecting this PC and local disk C. And now let's create a folder called Java here. So I'll right-click with my mouse, select New Folder. I'll just name this file Java. So now I'm pasting the JDK folder that you saw me download earlier. Alright, so we have now installed the JDK on the computer, but we do have one last step to do. We need to define the path of the java.exe file in the JDK folder here to the operating system. So for this, I can just open up JDK folder. I also open up the bin folder. Alright, so let's find the Java file here. Alright, so I found the Java file. Now let's define the path of this file to the system. Alright, so first I just click on the address bar at the top of the window and copy the file path here by pressing Ctrl-C right here on the keyboard. Now let's define this file path to the system. So I'll right-click on this PC from the left side and select the Properties option from the drop-down menu. From this window that opens, well, you can learn some of the basic information about your operating system, should you need to. So now I'll select the Advanced System Settings option right on the right. I'll select the Environment Variables option from the System Properties window that opens. Now if you notice, there are two different sections here. We're going to use a bottom section, namely System Variables, to define the JDK to the system. So that means after selecting the path option from the section here, I choose the Edit option. And here we'll just paste the path to the Java file in the bin folder. So to do that, I'll select a new option and paste the file path we just copied by pressing the Ctrl and V keys together on the keyboard in this view that opens. Alright, so that way we have now defined the JDK file to the system. So the meaning of this process is just like this. If you want the operating system to run Java, the operating system has to know where the Java exe file is. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to run it. Okay. So for this reason, we have defined the folder where the java.exe file is located on our operating system. And finally, I can press the OK button. So I press OK once again. And there you have it, my friends. Just watch me complete the JDK installation necessary to develop applications using Kotlin. I hope you did it along with me. If not, catch up and install it, because we're just going to take a short break here, and in our next lesson we're going to install the Integrated Development Environment, IDE, for Android Studio. And this, of course, will be necessary to develop Android applications. Alright? See you in the next lesson, which is also called Android Studio. So now we'll do the necessary installation procedures. Android Studio is a completely free platform that can be downloaded and used by anyone. But then you have to learn how to use it, huh? Now, I also want to explain a little bit that IDE is a software application that combines all of the features and tools needed by a software developer. So a developer would be able to debug, run, and test applications with IDE. And because it provides useful debugging and testing features, it's all in one handy place. So IDE helps us in quickly navigating to a type without really needing to worry about our project. It also provides auto-completion. That means you start typing a part of a function or a class name and press a shortcut combination, and the rest of the name will be automatically typed in for you. Love it. Now, all these features are pretty good reasons for you to prefer an IDE. But I'll tell you something for nothing. The most used IDEs for Kotlin are Android Studio and IntelliJ. I prefer Android Studio, so I'm going to introduce Android Studio to you, and I'm going to write Kotlin programs on Android Studio during this course. Alright, how's that? So, if you want to continue with me, let's do these necessary steps to download Android Studio now. Right, so first up, we need to open our browser. So in the search bar, we just write Android Studio download. Press enter. And here we will open a second result, namely download Android Studio and SDK tools. If you pay close attention, the site is the developer.android.com site. Right? So this site is a site that Android developers must follow, my friends. So you can follow the latest developments, updates, and documentation required so that you too can develop applications on and for Android here. Alright, so we can now proceed with the download. So this looks like the most up-to-date version of our Android Studio. Now, of course, I do want to point out something here. Android Studio is continually updating. So even while I was creating this video, the most current version is 2020.3.1. So this version is called Arctic Fox. Right, so this version might appear different to you. But pretty much the download and installation process of Android Studio is the same. So it just won't make a difference. But if you do see a different version here, I just don't want you to worry. Alright, so just by following these steps, I'm going to explain how you can perform the download and installation process, and then we'll get going. Okay? Now, before proceeding with the installation process, I would like to show you these Android Studio system requirements. Now, at the end of the page is the system requirements section. So just review the section. You can find out whether the computer you're using is efficient enough for Android Studio. Just a little disclaimer here. If your computer does not meet these specifications here, you could buy a new computer. Or you can just change some of your computer's features, right? For instance, if your computer is 4 gigs RAM, you could increase it to 8 gigs relatively simply and inexpensively. You could even drop back a version or two of Android Studio, but, you know, I would pretty much recommend you to just move forward. Whatever it takes, right? But anyway, let's just now download Android Studio. So I'll open up the top of the page. And if your computer's operating system just happens to be Windows 64-bit, it'll pretty much look like mine. And you can start the download process just by clicking the Download Android Studio button here. If your computer's operating system doesn't happen to be Windows 64-bit, well, you can click on the Download Options tab on the left. So when you click on that tab, see the download links for 64-bit, Mac 64-bit, Linux 64-bit. But yeah, you probably noticed there's no option for 32-bit operating systems. So it's time for you to get into the 21st century if you need that. I'll tell you why. Because Android Studio doesn't support 32-bit at all since version 4.0. So if your operating system is 32-bit, well, just go ahead and download Android Studio 3.6.3. Alright? So this is the last version of Android Studio before 4.0. No shame in it, my friends. This is how we learn, right? Anyway, for this, we could click on the Download Archives link. And then from the window that opens up, we just need to accept the relevant contract terms. So with this, I could click the Agree with Terms button. And as you can see, we have accessed all of the versions of Android Studio. So we're a pretty versatile. Wow, bunch, huh? So from here, you can find the 3.6.3 version of Android Studio and use a download link required for 32-bit operating systems. So whichever version you want, let's start the download process. So of course I'm going to open up the previous page since my computer's operating system is. That means I will download the appropriate Android Studio. But no matter which page you're on, just click on the file with the extension .exe here. And in order to download Android Studio, we need to fill the terms of the contract. After confirming the checkbox here, the button that we will use to download Android Studio becomes active. So clicking this button will start the download process. So I'll just click the button. And yeah, so here you can see that the download has started. And yes, just like before, the download process may take a little bit depending on your internet speed. So I'm just going to fast forward through this. Wow, that was fast. And now you can see that the download is complete. So I'll click on the arrow button, well, it's really an icon, to the right of the downloaded file and select the Show in Folder option. So here we can view the file that we've downloaded. So I'm just going to double click on this. Windows asks, do you allow this application to make changes to the computer? Yeah, that's quite a warning. I'm just going to press yes. So the warning might not appear for you. It's not really important. But whatever you have to do to install, you'll install, because here you can see the installation screen opens, and here we click on next. And once again, we press next. Right, so the location where the files will be saved will be written to, so you can change this location, or you can just keep it wherever it is by default. I usually prefer, actually, the default file path. That's why I just press the next button once again without making any changes. That way, if it knows, I know. So here it asks if we can create a shortcut for Android Studio. Now, in fact, it's reading my mind because I do want to create a shortcut. You don't have to if you don't want to, but just confirm the checkbox here. So I'm not going to make any changes. So now we can start the installation process. By clicking the install button here, we will start the installation. As you can see, the installation process begins. And just like downloading, this process may take some time, so I'll just fast forward. And yeah, that was a great installation. And now it's complete, so I'll press next. So it states that the installation process of Android Studio is now complete. Yay. So if we want Android Studio to start after the installation process, we just need to check this checkbox. I'm going to uncheck it though. And we're going to start Android Studio together. So please do that, and I'll press finish. Alright, so that completes the necessary installation process of all these things. So, in fact, you could call this the pre-installation of Android Studio, because we haven't quite completed the installation of Android Studio yet. We still need to install the SDK. That we're going to do in the next lesson. So we'll take a short break here, and I'll see you there. But remember, the installation process is not completely finished. So that means in this lesson, we are going to complete the SDK installations. We're also going to examine in good detail how to create a project in Android Studio. All right, so if you're ready, you must be chomping at the bit. Let's get started. So first, let's find Android Studio app where we downloaded it from the search bar. So we type in Android Studio, and we can find the application that we downloaded. Yeah, so as you can see, we found the app, so now I click Open. So now we can open the application. If you notice, a window called Import Android Studio Settings pops up. So if you've already got Android Studio installed on your computer, you can just directly transfer the settings there. But since we are going to install Android Studio for the very first time, we'll choose the Do Not Import Settings option. You follow? So I'll just press the OK button. Now here it asks if we want to share the data with Google. Now I'll choose the don't send option just because. You can choose whatever you want, but whatever you do, you'll see a window in the form of Android Studio Setup Wizard pops up. So now we can start the installation. So let's press the next button, and here we come up to two different options: standard installation, custom installation. So you can complete the necessary installation procedures by choosing the standard installation from here. But I do want to show you all of the steps in the installation process. So that means I'm going to choose custom. So here I just press the next button again. Now on this page, it'll ask us to select the JDK, that is the Java Development. Get location. So this kit comes embedded with Android Studio. So actually there's not a real need for the JDK installation that we did in the previous lesson. I just want to show it to you. We still want the updated JDK file to be on our computer. You follow? So if you want to use a different IDE instead of Android Studio, you must have a JDK on your computer. Now you get it. So we download the JDK and make our computer ready to write code. So that's why we choose Embedded JDK as our option here. So we can press the next button again. And here we can choose the theme of the interface that we're going to code. There are two different options: Darkula and Light. Now, typically I prefer the light mode, but you can always reserve that option to choose later. So I'll press Next. So on this page, we'll do the necessary procedure for the installation of the SDK. That is the Software Development Kit. So as you can see here, we've got Android SDK Platform, Performance, and Android Virtual Device. So these are our three different options. Now, at this point, it really is worth noting that we can test the applications that we make in Android Studio on virtual devices offered to us by Android Studio. That's why I suggest you choose all of the options here. Otherwise, you may encounter some problems a bit later on. Therefore, I'll choose all three different options. And just below, we need to specify the SDK location. I usually set these locations to be default. You can save it to any folder that you want, and I'll press the next button again. Now on this page, for the emulator, we can set the RAM size that we're going to allocate. Now in general, we can pretty much use the size suggested. And then while your emulator is running, the size that you set here will be used from your RAM port. When you close the emulator, your RAM will continue to run at its previous size. So without changing anything, I'll just press Next. So this page also lists the settings that we have made so far. So if there's any setting that you want to change, you can always return to the previous page where you made the relevant settings, changing by clicking the previous button. So if you're not going to make any changes, you can confirm all of the settings. And that way we can complete the installation by clicking the Finish button. As you can see, the download starts. And just like before, this process may take a while, so I'm just going to stop the screen recording at this point, and when the installation is complete, we'll continue where we left off. Alright, my friends, my installation is complete, and I hope yours went well. So here I'll just press the Finish button. As you can see, to create a new project or open an existing project in Android Studio more precisely, This will be the first screen that we encounter every time that we open Android Studio. But in any event, we can create a new project here. So I'll choose from here the Create New Project option. So from this page, we'll choose a template for Android project that we're going to create. So first I want to have a look around at the different tabs here. So as you know, Android operating system is used not only in phones and tablets, but also in watches, televisions, and cars, and, well, many different areas. So it becomes important on which device type that you want the application to work. So you will need to choose a template suitable for the relevant device. Since we will develop applications for tablets and phone, well, we're going to choose the Phone and Tablet tab. And of course, there are many different templates in this tab. So Android Studio offers us some ready-made templates so that we can get faster results for the projects that we'll do. For example, if we're going to make an application about Google Maps, right? Well, we can use the template here. Of course, we'll always choose an empty template. If you notice, there is the empty activity option as well. We're also going to talk about the concept of activity a lot from now on, because in Android, the interface design is shown to the users, and the software part related to the interface design constitutes the activity. Now, those might be unfamiliar concepts right now, but we're going to talk about them until, well, forever. So we're going to explore those details in some of the upcoming lessons. Just for now, choose the empty activity option. Press the next button. And from this page it opens, we will configure the project that we create. So in other words, we determine the name of our project and the programming language right here on this page. So let's make those necessary definitions. So I will specify the name of my project, and of course you can write whatever name you want. At the same time, the name that you write here will be the name of your application. So for now, I'm just going to write first project. Now the second field is the field where we're just specifying the package name of our project. So you can think of the package name as the ID of your application. So generally, project package names are created as com.anything.application name. Okay. So if you just leave this as the example, you wouldn't be able to publish your application on Google Play, because Google accepts the expression example as a sample word and would not allow it to be published on Google Play. Therefore, if you do work for a company, you can always write special expressions such as company name or your own surname. So that's why for now I'm just going to leave the example for now, because I'm not going to be publishing this application anywhere. Alright, so the third part in here is the file path, where our project will be saved. So you can save your project to any folder that you want to on your computer, but notice that there are slash and project name right at the end of the file path. So in other words, if you change the file path, remember to add slash and your project name to the end of the new file path. Otherwise, you won't be able to save your project, okay? That's why in the beginning I like to choose default. So here in the fourth part, we'll need to choose the programming language that we will use in our project. Now we will be building our applications using the Kotlin programming language, so that's why I choose Kotlin from here. The fifth partition is the minimum SDK partition. So in other words, from which version of Android will we want the applications that we're going to make run And we can determine this right from this section here. So as you know, Android is constantly releasing new versions. Like Android 9, 10, Android 11. So it's from this section that we can determine the minimum Android level that the applications that we will make are going to work on. For example, if we choose Android 8, well, the application that we will make will also work on Android 8, Android 9, Android 10, and Android 11. So that's why the version that you choose refers to the minimum Android version. So if you notice, when I choose any version, Android Studio tells us just below what percentage of Android devices this application will run on. So if you are going to publish your app on the Play Store, you can choose a lower Android version from this section. So of course at this point, I also need to point out the following. Since some codes are updated with each new version of Android, choosing the lowest Android version can sometimes cause us problems. So that's why I generally choose API level 23. Of course, we can change these settings later, my friends. It's not a do or die situation right here. Okay. You can choose any version, because we're just currently doing sample projects. Just want to flag that up for you. So now finally a checkbox gets created, and here we can use Android's old library, Android support. But we're not going to choose this option because we will use the Android X library. And this is the current library of Android. So that's what we'll be using in our projects, my friend, the current library of Android, this Android X library. All right, so now let's create our first project, or, well, my first project, by clicking the Finish button. So here, the creation of this first project may take a little while. It's also related to the speed of your computer. Now you may also encounter an assistant like this when any invocation or update is made in Android Studio. So you can review this document. You can also close this window just by clicking the Assistant tab here. And on the bottom right part of the interface, we'll see an expression of the build processes of the project. So, here, my friends, we don't want to take any action before we see the completion of the project. Right? Otherwise, you may encounter some problems, and you don't want to do that right at the beginning. So again, just by opening the Build tab here, we can see whether the project is completed or not. Alright, so when the project is completed, or if any error is encountered, you can see these processes right here in this section. The process of creating the project may take some time again. So that's why I'm just going to stop the screen recording here. And when the project is completed, we'll continue where we left off, my friends. Alright? So as you can see, the project has been created. So far, we have installed Android Studio. We've created our first project. So from here, we're going to take a break. In the next lesson, we'll go over all of Android Studio's interface. See you in the next lesson. Previous lesson, we completed the installation of Android Studio. So you know what that means. In this lesson, we will examine the interface of Android Studio. Alright, so let's get right to it. So of course, after creating our first project, we encountered a screen like this. So then at this point, I would like to remind you once again, after making sure that your project is fully loaded in the build section, you must perform the necessary actions. Because if your project has not been loaded yet, you can wait for the project to load completely without taking any action. Alright, so after making that little disclaimer, reminder, we can now examine the interface of Android Studio. Alright, so if you have a look, we can actually break down this interface into 4 different parts. So the first part is, well, this is the part where we're going to do the coding and the necessary designs for our projects. If you notice, there are 2 tabs here. First of these is a main activity. And this is what we're going to use when we write code. And the second one is the XML file that we can design for our project. Now, while developing an Android application, we first create the design of the application that we're going to make. And then write all the necessary coding for this design. So in fact, this section is what we will use as the very basis of what we're going to do from here on out. So for now, it's enough to know that this is where we start. So after examining the other parts of the interface, we're going to examine this part in detail. So in other words, we'll come back to it. Now, the section here on the left is the section where the project files are located. So if you see this part differently, you can just click on the part that says Android above. So here on your screen, it might say Project instead of Android. Okay, so you can choose the Android option from the pop-up. That opens, and here's a little menu, and let me just talk about this a little bit. So when we create a project in Android Studio will also create many different files related to a project for us, just automatic. So that way we have the opportunity to run our project on different platforms, share it with different people, or even publish our project. So this feature is the main reason why we use IDEs like Android Studio instead of a simple text editor when coding. So if the project is selected instead of Android here, we will view all the created project files in here. Of course, this kind of creates a complex view because while developing applications, we're not actually going to be using every file that is automatically created. Therefore, for a simpler view, just make sure that the Android option is selected here. So if we examine the project directory here, a new folder has been created under a Java folder with the package name that we specified when creating the project. And just below the package folder, the Kotlin class, that is main activity, where we will do the coding, right, has been created as well. So when we develop an app, we will make our applications where we will need more than one class. Yeah. So here are the Kotlin classes that we will create for this stage. You may not know the concept of each of the classes right now, but don't worry. We will learn these terms in detail throughout our upcoming lessons. And we also talked about the design file. So where is this design file, you might ask? Well, if you look a little further down the project directory, you will see a folder named Res has been created. And this is actually the resources folder. Maybe I should call it Reese. But then I think of peanut butter cups. Okay, so this is the folder in any event where the design files, images, colors, writing styles, and themes related to our project are kept. So we're going to dig into these in detail too in the future. I want you to also have a look in the layout folder here. There's the design file of our application. So now if you close the main activity class and the activity main.xml file right there next to them, by pressing the X sign, you can open them up again from the project directory. So we can also collapse and expand the part reserved for the project directory. For this, you can position your mouse on the line between project panel and main panel. Now notice that the cursor has changed, right? So you can expand or collapse the project panel by dragging it to the right or the left. You can also close and open your project panel completely. For that, you just press the minimize icon here. If you want to open the project panel again, you can just click on the project tab here. Alright, my friends, so that's pretty much the project panel. So now we can look at the menu bar at the top of the interface. So here you can see many windows and many interfaces. From the File tab to the Help tab. Okay, so first we can examine the File tab. As you can see, there are many features in here, but we will examine the features that we will use just, for the outset. During the course, we will, of course, examine the other features as we need them. So first off, you can create a new project by using the New and New Project options here. By using the open option, you can open up a project that you have created before. You can also close your open project by just using the close project option. You can use the settings option here to make the necessary settings for Android Studio. Of course, some of our friends will be using the Macintosh OS, so we can, or you can, anyway, click on the Android Studio icon that's just to the left of the File tab and select Preferences from the pop-up menu that opens there. Alright, so now let's go ahead and open up the settings screen. You can search for the feature that you want to. There's a very clever search bar here. For example, size of text in the area where we will be coding can be quite small. So I'll just enlarge the text so that you can see it better. Alright, so for this I just type font in the search bar, and as you can see when I type font, the relevant features become available. So in order to change the necessary features, I'll first delete the text font from the search bar. Thus the relevant fields become active. So now you can change the font from the font section here. You can also enlarge the size of text from the size section just below. I'm going to set the font size to 18. Press OK or Apply at the bottom right, and that applies the changes. So as you can see, the text can be more readable now. Of course, you don't have to make it that big. I'm just doing it in a way so that you can see it easier. But now I want to look at another feature. I'll go back to the search bar and type in theme. Alright, so using this feature, you can change the interface theme to dark mode or light mode, depending on your preference. Alright, so let's examine the SDK section and finish the settings. So I'm writing SDK into the search bar. Here you can see SDK, and there are also 3 tabs just below. So the first is SDK platforms. If there were any problems during the installation, we could download the SDK that we need from here. As you can see, here's the installed statement. If you happen to have another statement, you should tick the checkbox here and press the apply button. That way you just reinstall SDK. Just installs what's necessary. So I open up the second tab, SDK Tools. As you can see, there are 4 tools installed here. If you're missing any of these, if it's not installed or if it needs to be updated, let's go ahead and tick this checkbox here and press the apply button. Now, of course, some of our friends are going to be using AMD processors, so you will need to select the Android emulator hypervisor driver for AMD processors. Such an option that you can check here. Now, I actually should mention that we are going to test the different applications that we develop on virtual devices that Android offers to us. These are typically called emulators, right? So these emulators use virtualization technology. Therefore, virtualization technology must be active on your computer. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to install the emulator. Now, I shared the steps that you need to do to activate the virtualization feature of your computer as an information note in our next lessons, but just want to give you a heads up. This feature is usually active on computers that already have an Intel processor. Okay, but computers with AMD processors, we might have to change it manually. So just keep that in mind. So yeah, let's continue. We can also install Google Play services and USB driver tools here. That way, if you want to test your projects on your Android device instead of on an emulator, you can always install these tools. So for this, I'll just tick the checkbox and click on Apply. Click OK. And accept the necessary licensing agreements. So when you click the Next button, the necessary installation process begins. And of course, my friends, if you encounter any errors during the installation process, if the necessary tools are not properly installed, well, you can just go back to the settings section and complete your installation. Okay, so now that the download process is over, I'll just press the finish button. And sure enough, my friends, that completes this edition of the settings show. Now let's have a look at some of these other tabs that we're going to use. So I want to show you the View tab. So by using this tab, you can toggle many views in the interface. For example, by using the Tool Window tab here, we can open and close the tools on the edges of the interface. And again, from the Appearance section here, you can choose which tools that you want to appear on the interface. For example, if we select the toolbar from here, the Save the Project, Open an Existing Project, or Reload the Project icons will appear on the interface. The View tab is, well, generally like this. So I don't think I have to do anything more here, because we're actually not going to use these other tabs here much, but you never know. So you can open those and close those in your own time. I just wanted to let you know where they are. So finally, though, I do want to show you the Build tab here, because sometimes after the project is created, well, you might get an error or two. So in that case, you may need to rebuild your project. So to rebuild the project, you can just use the Rebuild Project tab here, and it'll allow you to rebuild your project. There may be some other situations where you need to restart your project, so always restart the project by selecting the Invalidate Caches and Restart, which is the option here under the File tab. And but don't worry, I'm going to explain this section in the tutorial where we will install the emulator. All right? So don't get too carried away. So why don't we go ahead and examine a little bit of the design area. So for this, I want to open the activity main.xml file. If you want to, we can close the project panel and you can see it more easily. All right, so that looks better. So we're only looking at the design space now, right? So we can get the design space a little closer, a little bit broader, a little bit fuller. And we can examine this design area by breaking it down into 4 different sections. The first is this palette section, upper left, okay? Here are the components that we're going to use while we're designing. For example, we'll access many components from here, such as buttons, text views that we can write text into, and image view components that we can add images to. Of course, we'll be using them, and I'll be showing you some of the details in the following lessons. So this is just a brief overview with some general info. So we can actually move any of the components here to the design area just by dragging and dropping. Also, if you click on the eye icon here and select the Show System UI option, you'll get a real Android phone screen. So you can make your designs that much better. There are also a couple of views in the design area. We don't really use the blue area. We'll only be doing our designing in the white area. So in order to edit this, I can click on the Select Design Surface icon here. And then when you select Design from here, only the white design area appears. And if you select the Blueprint option, only the blue design area will appear. And then if you select both sections will appear in the design area. But since we are doing our designs using just the white area, I will just choose the design option here. Alright, so I'm going to delete the text view component where the Hello World text is written. This you can click on the component and press the delete key on your keyboard. Now, if you press Ctrl and Z, you can always undo your actions. Or after selecting the component, you can just right-click with the mouse and select the delete option. So I couldn't exactly select the component. Do you see that? So I'll zoom in on the area and select it. Yeah, okay, see. Gotta be a little closer sometimes. So finally, you can select and delete the component from the component tree section, which is the second part of the design area. That was a smooth segue, huh? So again, to add components to the design area, you can just drag and drop a component that you choose from the palette section to the component tree section. Now the component tree is where the components that we use in the design area are located for design use. And we can select the components from the design area. We can also select them from the component tree, change their required properties. We can also change the properties of the components from the attribute section located on the far right. Now to change any feature of a component, for example, the text size or the color, after selecting the component from the design area or the component tree, we can find the feature that we want right here from the attribute section and make any changes that we want to. And of course, we'll be doing all of these processes in detail later on, but now you know where they're located. So I do want to tell you this though. If you notice, the design file is actually a .xml file. So in other words, an XML code is actually created for all the components that we'll be using while designing. And here are all the properties of the components as well. For example, to add a button to the design area, we can add the button from the palette by dragging and dropping, or we could create it by writing the XML code. And for that, we can just open the Split or Code tabs on the upper right corner. And if we open the Code tab, we will only see the section where the XML codes are written. So if we open the Split section, we can see both XML and design. So if you open up the Design tab, you can only see the design area. And then if you notice, the XML codes for the button that we created are automatically generated. Cool, so in our next lessons, we will learn how to create the components using XML. My friends, you can see Android Studio's interface is pretty easy and fun to navigate around. I've shown you most of the parts that we're going to be using frequently throughout this course, so we will get into the details in the future. All right, my friends, so we've made all the necessary preparations to develop our applications using Kotlin. So now we can just, well, now that we're all set up, we can just focus on learning the Kotlin programming language. So the way that's going to go is teach you Kotlin, then we'll develop Android applications using Kotlin. So therefore, I will install the emulator after we hit up some of this Kotlin language, okay? So we'll take a short break here, and I'll see you in the next video. The JDK installation, we completed Android Studio installation. We had a tour of the interface of Android Studio. So in other words, we are set, ready, and primed, okay, to develop Android applications using this Kotlin programming language. So now, why don't we just get started? So we'll go to Android Studio, do a few necessary actions. If you remember, we already have a project called First Project, which we created while installing Android Studio, and we have it left over from the previous lesson, so our screen looked like this. So before we delve into Kotlin, I want to show you how to close an open project in Android Studio and then create a new project. So to close an existing project in Android Studio, my friends, we can use the File tab in the upper left corner of the screen. And after clicking on the File tab, we can select the Close Project option from here. In this case, our project in Android Studio will be closed. So as you see, we encounter a pop-up here when you first start Android Studio. So if you notice, the first project that we created earlier appears here. In this area, the projects that we have created before appear so that we can open any project just by clicking on them. Convenient. So if a project that we have created before is not actually displayed in this area, we can just select the Open Existing Project option to open that project. Alright, so after choosing that, we'll need to access the file containing the project that we want to open. At this stage, you know where you saved your projects, right? So my projects are saved in the Android Studio project folder by default. That's why I don't change that. So if we select First Project from here and press the OK button, we can open up the project. And of course, to create a new project, because that's what we're setting out to do, I just want to choose the Create New Project option here. I select the Empty Activity option in the Phone and Tablet tab and press Next. And from this page, we will configure the project that we will create, my friends. So I'll write First Kotlin Program in the name of the project. You can, of course, write whatever you want. We can change the package name, or it can stay like this. If you want to, you can write your surname instead of the example here. So I'll write Techmania here. And then this will be where the file gets saved, and I'm not going to change that. Alright, so our programming language will be Kotlin. And the minimum SDK level, I will set to 23. Alright, so after making these adjustments, I'll just press the Finish button and wait for the project to be created. Cool, so when you create a project for the first time, it may take a few minutes, alright? So we don't really get to take any action here before the project is completely created. Alright, because if you start messing around, you might get some errors. Alright, my friends, so let's check it out from the Build tab. As you can see, our project has been successfully created, so now we can take a few wonderfully necessary actions. Before developing Android applications, I want to show you how this Kotlin language works, right? Some of the basic coding in Kotlin. So we're not going to actually use this space here right now, my friend, and we will not make any designs either. But I already pre-warned you, so there you go. So why is this? Well, we're not going to develop an application right now because I really do want to show you the basics of Kotlin and some of the most frequently used commands as well. So after we learn Kotlin really, really well, and you will learn it quickly, then we can develop, well, at a much swifter pace, perhaps, really great Android applications by using all of the information that you have learned up to that point. So, my friends, I've explained enough. That's enough legal disclaimer. Let's move on to learning Kotlin, okay? So, For that, we need to create a new Kotlin file, and we'll do some of the necessary operations in this file. So we'll create a new file in Kotlin as follows. Select the package name in the project directory and right-click. Select New Kotlin Class / File, and that's from the option window that opens. So as you can see, a window pops up. From this window, we choose File option, not the class. So after selecting the File option, we need to give this file a name. Now, in this lesson, because it's the first time, we will print an expression, namely Hello World, to the console using Kotlin. So therefore, I will set the name of the file that I will create to be Hello World. If you notice, I always capitalize the first letters of the file that we create here. I don't leave any spaces in between two words. Now, since the word Hello World, words, I suppose, are two different words, we capitalize the first letters of each. Right? So this is the general protocol. Now, another spelling is hello _ world. But your first word should usually be capital. Right, so now I'll just correct that again. So after typing hello world, press the enter key on the keyboard. And as you can see, a new Kotlin file gets created. Cool, so now we will print hello world to the console using this Kotlin file. And here I would like to point out that normally in order to perform an operation in the Java programming language, well, there must be at least one class and at least one main function in the class. But you don't need a class in Kotlin, so it's not mandatory here. Therefore, instead of creating a class here, we will first create a function. Of course, you might be a little more unfamiliar with these concepts like class and function, but don't worry about that. We'll get into those weeds later in our next lessons. So currently, you only need to specify that there must be at least one main function in order to run a program in Kotlin. Because when you run the program, the Java virtual machine has to know where to run the code. Therefore, we will create the main function here. So how is the main function created? Well, here I just write fun, to represent the function, and press enter on the keyboard. So if you pay close attention, when you type in fun, Android Studio offers us some options. And from here, you can select the fun option and press enter. Cool, so next we need to give a name to the function that we've created. Now, since this function is our main function, we will write main here. Now, notice when we write main here, we can understand that this is an executable function with the green triangle. Right. So now we can move on to creating the function. So after typing fun main, open a parenthesis here, and we'll need to specify the parameter, that is the argument of this function in parentheses. And we'll specify the argument as follows. We write args, that is argument, in the parentheses. I put a colon and write array in here and select the array option. Then when we press the less than key on the keyboard, we create a tag. That is chevrons. Now, in addition to this, we'll need to specify the type of this directory in the tag. So I'll just write string here. And finally, we need to specify the scope of this function. So we use curly braces for this. By passing in the enter key, I'll move to the next line when I press the Alt F7 keys on the keyboard. Curly braces appear, just like that. So I press enter again. So in this way, we have created our main function. So let me just show you again and explain it. So notice here that the function starts with the expression fun. The name of this function is main. Also, this main function takes a parameter. And this parameter is an array. The type of this array is string. specify the scope of the main function with curly braces. So, if we're going to print something to the console, we have to write it between these two curly braces, you see? So to put that more precisely, when we run the program, the codes that we write in this main function will run. So if you want to, let's go ahead and print hello world to the console now. So how would you print an expression to the console in this Kotlin programming language example that I'm showing you? So for this, we'll just use the system.out.print function in Java. But in Kotlin, we will only use the print function for this. So after you write the print function, you can write an expression that you want to show on the console in parentheses. Of course, since we're going to print hello world, that is a string expression, I write hello world between double quotation marks, my friend. Yeah, so actually when we run the program, we will see the hello world on the console. Now, of course, you might be thinking, well, why did we put double quotation marks like that? This is actually a syntax form of string expression. So in our lessons, you will be seeing this a lot. And we will see variable types such as strings and integers. But for now, that's enough to know. So how can we print an expression to the console using this Kotlin programming language? Well, let's now run this program. And here's how we run the program in Kotlin. Select the file that we want to run from the project directory. Right-click with a mouse. Select the file named Run Hello World from here. When you choose as a console screen, well, open at the bottom of Android Studio, and we can see the output of the program on this screen. And while the program is running, I would like to underline the following once again. We are currently learning to print an expression on the screen using this Kotlin programming language. So what I want you to do is, first of all, if you just watch the lesson and complete the steps that I've done, by the time you know a little bit more about Kotlin, you will certainly understand these operations. Well, what's the expression, like the back of your hand? You'll know it like the back of your hand. I don't spend too much time looking at the back of my hand, but you get the point. So my friends, you can see now that the program works. We see hello world on the console. Okay, so we printed hello world on the screen using Kotlin. So let's go over what we did. So since we've only learned a little bit and we're not developing any Android applications yet, we did create a new Kotlin file. We will continue our operations through this Kotlin file. And also, if you want to run a bit of code in Kotlin programming language, we need at least one function. The name of this function that we created is the main function. So we created the main function as follows. First, we needed to specify that it is a function. So that's why we write fun here. And we write the name of the function, namely main. And we need to define an argument to it in parentheses. And we define it like this. Args represents the argument. After writing a colon, we create an array of the type string. We specify the scope of this function using curly braces. So we specify the area, okay, that it will cover. And finally, we can write the codes that we want inside these two curly braces. And we printed hello world to the console. And then how do we actually print? Well, we print this with the print function. So we put it in double quotation marks inside the parentheses. Hello world is a string. And in order to run the program, we choose our file from the project directory, right-click with the mouse, and choose the Run Hello World option. Right, so that prints Hello World on the console. All right, my friends, so that's it for this. We'll take a short break here, and then in our next lesson, we're going to, I'll get into some more of the details of this Kotlin language. I hope you're enjoying it so far, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Hello, everyone. So in this lesson, we are starting the main fundamentals of this Kotlin programming language, which is why you signed up. Right, so one of them is variables. So in this section, we're going to first learn what is a variable. Then we're going to learn how to declare and initialize variables. See, that way we'll be learning types of variables because there are mutable variables and immutable variables. And everything's variable, all right? So let's start off with this variable question. So if you think of variables like a container or a box, which holds a value for you during the life of your particular Kotlin program, right? So we'll keep it relevant. So what it means is once you create a variable, you can reserve some space in memory. So every variable is assigned a data type, and then it holds the quantity of value or whatever the heck you're putting in there. I'll show you why I say that. Because there are two different steps to use a variable in a program: declaration and initialization. So in order to declare a variable, you must specify the variable and give a unique name to the variable. So in our example, we'll declare the variable to be age. Now, in order to initialize a variable, you've got to assign it a valid value according to its data type. So we use the equal sign, means that the value on the right side, the equal sign, will be saved into the variable on the left side. So in our example, we assign the value 37 to the variable age. All right, cool. So I want to tell you, though, that this Kotlin programming language has rules and conventions for naming variables. So while declaring variables, please note that Kotlin is a case-sensitive programming language. That means that upper or lowercase letters in your Kotlin programs matter a whole lot. So this variable age that here consists of all lowercase letters is way different from a variable age, which would be the first letter capital and the rest lowercase. So to continue with these naming conventions and rules, a variable name can begin with a letter or an underline mark. If you declare a one-word variable name, use lowercase all letters. This isn't necessarily mandatory, but it is conventional wisdom. Also, if you declare a variable name having more than one word, use all lowercase letters for the first word and capitalize is the first letter of the next word. So, now let's get into the types of variables. So we have two different types of variables in common. Mutable variables are represented by var. Immutable variables are represented as val. So basically, val and var are both used to declare a variable. But var is like a general variable and can be assigned multiple times. This is also known as the mutable variable in Kotlin. Whereas val is a constant variable. How's that? And cannot be assigned multiple times and can be initialized only one single time. That's why this is known as the immutable variable in Kotlin, right? Val, the immutable variable in Kotlin. Sounds like a hero. But we're not doing a complex game right now, so we'll postpone that idea. All right, so enough about variables. Why don't we just move on to Android Studio and do a little bit of an exercise. This way you'll get used to everything about it. So first we'll create a new Kotlin file. For this, all I have to do is right-click on the package folder in the project directory and select New Kotlin File. And follow the options. So I'm specifying the name of this file to be variable. So when you press enter on the keyboard, the Kotlin file is created. Now remember, we needed at least one main method in Kotlin. So first let's create the main method. But this time I want to show you how to create the main method in an easier way. Alright, so I'll just type in main here. From here I'll select the main A option and press enter. And what do you see here? We created the main method right away. Alright, so now we can get to coding. Alright, so we'll declare three variables. First, I'll write var A and assign a value of 10. Second, B and assign a value of 20. And lastly, C and assign A plus B. Okay, so let's print variable C on the screen just by using the print method. Now Android Studio has a quick shortcut for you to write this method, so just type S out and then hit enter on the keyboard. So this is named code completion. So it allows us to quicker complete statements in our code. We can use this combination in, well, all of the other parts of this program. Variables, functions, classes, etc. Also notice that in our previous lesson, we used only the print function when printing hello world to the console. But here we're using the println function. This means that after we print the desired expression to the console, the cursor then automatically moves to the next line. That is, when we print more than one result to the console using the println method, the results are listed one below the other. Alright, very cool. Okay, so let's run the code. For this, right-click on the variable Kotlin file and select Run. And the result will print 30 in the console. Also, we can directly write A plus B to the output. Okay, let's run it again. And the result is correct. Very good, so let's look at some of the naming rules for variables. So we're going to study this via variable age. Var age is valid. So also I would like to mention the comment line in Kotlin here. So in this Kotlin programming language, if you use a double slash, all the statements you type from that point on through to the end of the line are perceived to be comments. It is. It's not perceived as code. Comment lines are not taken into account when compiling your code. If you want to use more than one line as a comment line, you can write whatever you want between /star and // this time. So just by using this feature, you can take notes on the margins of code. Oh dear. Right. Let's continue from where we left off. var underscore age is valid. var age3 is valid. But var a space ge is invalid, right? And 3 age is invalid. All right, because a variable name. Cannot contain a space, as well as you can begin a variable name beginning with a number. All right, so let's comment out our code here. So I'll use a slash and asterisk marks for the comment line, as there are multiple lines. All right, cool. So now I want to show you the difference between var and val. So first off, I'll create a variable of type var named age and assign the value 20. Now I'll assign the value 10 to the age variable in the next line. And now let's print the age variable to the console. So what do you think is going to be written on the console? You must have an idea, right? 10 or 20? Cool, so those who said 10, you got it. Because the type of the age variable is var. And we can change the value of this variable, type var. We first transfer the value 20 to the age variable. Then we transfer the value 10 in the next line, and as a result, the value of the age variable became 10. And we printed 10 to the console. So now let's create a variable of the type val. So I'm typing val year, and I'll assign the value 2020 to the year. So let's try to change the value. The year variable in the next line. So I will write year equals 2019. Yeah, so as you can see, Android Studio throws an error because when we position the cursor over the word year, we see the warning val cannot be reassigned. So in other words, we wouldn't be able to pass a second variable to a variable of the type val. All right, so what's going on here? When do we need the val and when do we need the var? Well, while developing an application, we may want the value of some variables to remain the same. For example, if you're going to make a calculator and you're going to use the value pi, and you're going to specify pi to be 3 all over this application. In this case, you could create a variable of the type val named pi. Right. Or we could think of it like this. Say you've developed an application that retrieves some data from the internet. So in this case, the data retrieved from the internet may vary from time to time. So in that case, you would definitely specify the type of the variable that you would define to be var. All right, so that's the concept of var and val. I hope you understood them, because now you really just need to play with them and write them in and see how you do. But now you know what you need to do in order to create a variable. All right, so in our next lesson, we're going to learn about data types. So I'll see you there in the next video. Lesson, we're going to go over some data types. The data type basically defines the values that a variable can take. Based on the data type of a variable, the operating system allocates memory and then decides what can be stored in the reserved memory. So therefore, by assigning different data types to variables, you could store integers, decimals, or characters as these variables. So in Kotlin, we generally define the data type of the variable to use it, and we cannot assign incompatible data types. Otherwise, the compiler will give us an error. So let's have a look at this diagram. There are 5 basic data types available in Kotlin. First one is Boolean data types. The second is character data types. And this is represented in Kotlin as char. Now the third is a numbers data type. And there are 2 different number variables. So the first is integer variables, and the second one is floating point variables. There are 4 different integer variables, and these are byte, short, int, and long variables from smallest to largest. Floating point variables are also divided into 2. These are float and double. And then finally we'll get to string variables, and these represent textual expressions in arrays, and these can hold more than one value in themselves. All right, so let's have a look at the different Kotlin data types in this table. The byte data type is an 8-bit signed 2's complement integer. The byte data type is useful for saving memory in large arrays. There's a minimum value of -128 and a maximum value of 127 inclusive. So the default value of the byte is 0. The short data type is a 16-bit signed 2's complement integer. Similar to byte, uses short to save memory in large arrays in situations where the memory savings actually matters. Now this has a minimum value of -32,768 and a maximum value of 32,767. Inclusive. Also, the default value of short is 0. The int data type is a 32-bit signed 2's complement integer, which has a minimum value of negative 2 to the 31st and a maximum value of 2 to the 31st minus 1. The long data type is a 64-bit 2's complement integer. Sign long has a minimum value of -2 to the 63rd and a maximum value of 2 to the 63rd minus 1. So you use this data type when you need a range of values wider than those provided by int. Float data type is a single precision 32-bit floating point. So if you need to save memory in large arrays of floating point numbers, definitely use a float instead of a double. The double data type is a double precision 64-bit floating point. decimal values. This data type is generally the default choice. Boolean data type will represent only one bit of information, either true or false. The char data type is a single 16-bit Unicode character. Alright, so when defining data types in Kotlin, we've got to first specify the variable type. Then we write the name of the variable that you're going to create. So in this example, the name of the variable is age. Then we have to specify the data type after putting in a colon. So in this example, the data type is integer. So after the equal sign, you've got to pass the value of the variable. So in this example, I have passed the value 20 to the age variable of the type integer. Okay? So that's how we define a variable in Kotlin. Alright, so that's marvelous information that hopefully you didn't know before about using variables with Kotlin. So we'll move on to Android Studio and do a little bit of an exercise. Cool, so we first got to create a new Kotlin file. So I'll just right-click on the package folder in the project directory and select New Kotlin File. Now, I'm specifying the name of this file as data types. So when you press enter on the keyboard, our Kotlin file is created. Okay. So of course you remember that we need at least one main method in Kotlin. First, let's create the main method. So we'll start with data types. Var Boolean equals true. So this Boolean type has two possible values, either true or false. Yeah. Var char equals R. Char type declares a character. Var byte equals 12. So this byte type can have values, right, between minus 128 right the way through 127. Var short equals minus 356. So the short type can have values from negative 32,767 right the way through 32,767. Var int equals 43,543. Int type is generally used for numeric values. So now let's declare variable f with the long data type. Long type is used for large values, as I'm sure you're remembering. So this capital L is a specific suffix for the long type. Another variable, g, with float data type. And float type is used for large values with single precision. And capital F is the specific suffix for float type. Another variable, h, with double data type. So double data type is used for large values with double precision. So there we go. We've defined the variables. We've set their initial values. So now let's print the values of these variables on the console just by using the println function. So first I will print the a variable to the console. Now I'll copy this line of code by pressing Ctrl-C on the keyboard at the same time, paste it 7 times by pressing Ctrl and V on the keyboard at the same time. And let's change the variable name from A to H. Alright, so now let's run the code. Let's see the results in the console. Very cool, my friends. So we're going to end this lesson here, and next time we meet, we will learn type conversion and type casting. Alright, so I'll see you in the next video. hello my friends. So in our previous lesson we learned the data types that are used in Kotlin. We haven't learned any string and array data types yet. Well, we're going to learn more about this data type in our next lessons. But in this lesson we got to first learn how to convert between data types. Wait, what? Why would we need to convert data types? Why do we need data conversion? Okay, before you ask too many questions, let's say that you're going to develop a calculator application and you'll divide the one integer number entered by the user by another integer number entered by the user. But the result of the operation may not always be an integer. So in this case, if you don't convert the result to a double or a float, you're going to lose data. So if it doesn't quite make sense, let me just make it concrete with an example. So the user wants to divide the number 25 by 2. Right, so in this case, the result's going to be 12.5. If you define the result variable as an integer rather than a double or a float, well, in Kotlin, it's going to round it to 12. So in this case, we could use some type conversion. So how do we do that? Okay, you got me convinced. Let's do it. Well, but first, before we jump in, there's a number of different methods using Kotlin for this. That's why we're taking so long to delve in. So we'll have a look at these methods now. To convert any data type to byte type, the toByte method is used. To convert any data type to short, the toShort method is used. To convert any data type to the integer type, the toInt method is used. You following? So to convert any data type to the long type, yes, the toLong method is used. And any data type to the float type, the toFloat method is used. And to convert any data type to double, the toDouble method is used. Now, of course, there is another thing that you got to pay attention to. So you remember I shared the sizes of data types in the previous lesson? So let me just remind you once again here, the largest of the data types is double, then float, then long, then integer, then short, then byte. So if you convert a small value to a large value, there's not going to be a problem. In other words, if you convert a byte type to a double type, well, you will not experience any data loss. However, if you convert a large value to a small value, you may indeed incur data loss. For example, if you convert a variable of the type double to type integer, you will most definitely lose data. All right, my friends, so that's a little bit of inside info about this type conversion. But why don't we put it to good use and let's open up Android Studio and do some practice. So first I want to create a new Kotlin file. Now you could continue on the previous Kotlin file, but since I'm going to share these examples with you at the end of the section, I just want each topic to be a separate file. So you can follow the code according to the subject order. And, some people just like it that way. So I will set the file's name as type conversion. So now let's create the main method. So first of all, for your convenience, I will write out the type conversion methods in the comment line. toByte, toShort, toInt, toLong, toFloat, and finally toDouble. Alright, so now I can create a variable of the byte type here. So I'm typing var x:bytes equals 128. As you can see, Android Studio gives a warning. So, why? Anyone? Anyone? All right. Let me just tell you real quickly. A variable of the type byte could have a maximum value of 127. therefore we wouldn't be able to give this variable a value of 128 or more. So I'll just fix this and type in 127 here. Okay, so now let's create a variable of the type integer and pass the value of the variable x. All right, I'm typing var y colon integer equal, you're right, x dot to int. See how that converts the x value of the type byte to type integer, all thanks to the toInt method, and it transfers it to the variable y. So let's create a variable of the type double and pass the value of the variable y. So I'm typing var z colon double. I'm typing equals y dot to double. And that way we convert the y value of the type integer into double thanks to the method of type to double and transferred it to the variable z. So now we can print the x, y, and z variables to the console. So we will print the x value first. So I'll just type in print in x. Now I can copy and paste this line twice. I'll write y here and z here. Let's run our code. As you can see on the console screen, the value of the x and y variables is printed as 127. The value of the z variable is 127.0. So actually what we did here was type conversion from small to large. So we didn't lose any data. But I do want to show you type conversion from largest to smallest. Let's see what happens. First, I'll just convert these lines of code into the command line. Now I'll create a variable of type double. Typing var a colon double equals 132.32. Just below the line, I'm typing var b colon integer equals a dot to int. Last but not least, I'm typing var c colon byte equals b dot to byte. And now let's print these values to the console. So I'm copying and pasting the above print in methods here. But instead of x, y, and z, I'll write a, b, and c. Alright, so now let's run our code. So what you see here is the value of a is 132.32, while the value of b is only 132. So the value of c is a very different result, friends. That's because we try to convert a large number into a small number, and what did I tell you? We've got some data loss. So yeah, you've got to be forward thinking here and take it into consideration in future applications, because it could turn around and bite you where you don't want it to bite you. All right, my friends? So that is type conversion in Kotlin. We'll take a short break here, and then in the next lesson, we're going to learn about that string data type that I promised you about. All right? So I want to see you in the next one. On this lesson, we will learn string data types. Now, by string in Kotlin, we mean a set of characters, such as the word hello or the phrase, Kotlin is funny. When passing a value to a variable of string data type, we write the value to be passed between double quotation marks. So if you remember from before, we had a data type called char in our data types lesson. This char data type could only store one character. Well, what if we want to pass an expression with more than one character to a variable? That's why we need to use the variable type called string. Now in our example, it represents a string object in memory consisting of hello characters. So characters in a string are identified by their index number. In hello, in fact, the leftmost character H is at index 0. Next character, E, is at index 1, The string class provides many useful methods to perform string operations. So have a look at the table. The length method returns the length of a string. It has no parameters. The equals method compares the string with a specified string and returns true if two string objects contain the same contents, else false. Well, the isEmpty method returns true if the given string has 0 as its length. If the length of the string is non-zero, then it returns false. Plus method adds a string expression enclosed in parentheses to the end of another desired string expression. Lowercase method returns a string in lowercase. Uppercase method returns a string in uppercase. Now the trim method removes spaces at the beginning and end of the word. Cool. All right, so we'll move over to Android Studio and warm up with some practice. So before creating a new Kotlin file, let's just close these files that we created in previous lessons, because now I want to create a new Kotlin file. I'll specify the name of this file to be string data type. All right, so we'll create a main method, and then I'll create a variable of type string. So I'm writing var a:\string here. After typing equals, you can type in any expression that you want to between double quotation marks. So I'm just typing in hello Kotlin. And now let's print the variable a to the console. So I'm writing print in a, and now let's run the code. Okay, so as you see, the console says hello Kotlin. And now I want to show you how we can concatenate two string variables. So for this, I'll create a new variable of the type string. And here I write var b:\string. I write language between double quotes. Now let's print the variables a and b to the screen together. So I'm typing print in here. And write a plus b in parentheses. So the plus sign that we use here will concatenate two strings. So now we can run the application and let's have a look. And yeah, sure enough, it says hello Kotlin language on the console. But notice here that there's no space between the two words, right? Because this concatenation method adds the second word directly to the end of the first word. So how do you put a space between the two words? I'm glad you asked. I will show you. Since space will actually be of a type string, we can use double quotes and leave one space. So in parentheses, a plus double quotes, I leave a space, plus b. Let's run our code one more time. And there you have it. There is now a space between the words hello Kotlin and language. So what we did here was concatenated two different string expressions. So now let's print two variables of type string and integer to the console. Yeah, so for this, I will create a new variable of the type integer. I write var age:\int and pass the value 25. Now let's print your age is 25 on the console. So after typing print in, I write your age is in parentheses between the double quotation marks. And after leaving one space, I write plus age. See? Now let's run our code. So as you can see, it says your age is 25 on the console. Cool, I could see that you were getting it right as we were going along. So we're going to be using this a lot, okay? Very, very, very often. So we can learn some of the methods that are used in the string class. All right, so first of all, I'll just convert the codes that I wrote here into a comment line. Now we'll create a new string variable, var x:string equals, and I'm writing Kotlin. So now let's use the length method first. Now if you remember, the length method gives us the size of a string variable. So now I want x.length on a bottom line. Of course, this method will give us the length of the Kotlin word in the integer type. So if you press the Control and Space keys on the keyboard after you move the cursor to the right of the length method, well, you can open a suggestion window here. What do you know? So you see, therefore it would be more logical to pass this value to a variable of type integer. That's why I'm typing var I:'int equals here. Thus, the length of the Kotlin word will be calculated with the length method and then passed to the variable I of the type integer. And finally, we can print this I variable to the console. So I'm writing print in parentheses and between double quotation marks, I write length of Kotlin equals, and I write plus I. Cool, so now let's run the code. As you can see, the length of the Kotlin word on the console screen is right here. That is, how many characters it consists of. So that's how you use the length method. Now let's have a look at how you use the equals method. So what I'll do is convert the codes here to the comment line, but I will not delete the x variable. We can use that. So I'm typing x.equals here. I'm typing in parentheses between double quotes in Java. So if the value of the variable x is equal to the Java word, it'll give us the value true. If not, it will give us the value false. So as a result, it's going to return a Boolean value, right? Therefore, I will pass this result to a variable of type Boolean. So here I write var b::Boolean. Now let's print variable b to the console. So I write b in parentheses. Okay, so now let's run and test it out. So as you can see, it prints the false statement in the console. So now we can compare two different string expressions using the equals method. All right, so yes, there's more. Let's have a look at the isEmpty method. So this method also checks whether a value is passed to a string variable, and if not, it returns false. I'm also converting the codes here into comments. Now I'm typing print in here, and I'll write x.isEmpty in parentheses. This way we can print the true or false value directly to the console. And as you can see, we saw the false value in the console because the variable x is not empty and the value Kotlin is passed into it. So now let's have a look at the plus method. You can concatenate two string type variables using the plus method, right? So I'm typing print in right here, writing x.plus in parentheses. And we should write an expression of type string inside these parentheses. So I'm typing language here. Cool, so now let's run our code. And as you can see, the Kotlin language is written in the console. So now let's have a look at the lowercase and uppercase methods. These methods also convert all letters in a string type expression to lowercase or uppercase. So why don't we test it out? So here I'm typing print in, I write x.lowercase inside the parentheses. Now I'm going to the bottom line. After typing print in, I write x.uppercase. And also to separate these two lines of code, we can apply a method like this. I'm typing print in right here, and I'm doing a partition by pressing the asterisk key right on the keyboard between the double quotes and parentheses. You can use this method when you're not going to print multiple data to the console. So now let's run our code, and you can see, first, all letters of the word Kotlin are printed in lowercase, and then all letters are capitalized. And see, both expressions are separated by asterisks. Okay, so finally we'll learn the trim method, and we can wrap this lesson up. Of course, you remember, trim method was also for removing spaces at the beginning and at the end of string expressions. For example, let's say you made an application that asks the user for username and password. The user may have accidentally put a space at the beginning or the end of the username. People do that, yeah. Right. So in this case, if you do not delete this space while storing the username, the user may encounter an error the next time that they log into the application, won't be able to log in, and then they'll go crazy. Okay, so in these cases, the trim method is used. So let's now reinforce this issue with an example. So here I'll just create a new variable of the type string, and I'm writing var t:\string. After double quotes, I put 3 spaces and type Android. So after typing Android, I'll leave 3 spaces again. Now let's print the variables x and t together to the console. First I will print without using the trim method. So I'll write x plus t in parentheses. Just the bottom line this time, I will use a trim method, so here I'm typing x plus t dot trim. Alright, so now let's run our code. And look at that, as you can see, it was first printed with spaces, and then it was printed after it removed the spaces in between. What do you think of that? Some kind of magic? I don't think so. That's Kotlin. Alright, so my friends, that is how you deal with string variable types. So we'll take a short break here, and in our next lesson, we're going to learn about the array variable type. Alright, there's a lot packed into arrays. So I'll see you next time. So in this lesson, we're going to learn about arrays. Now, I'm sure you remember when we were talking about data types, we said that there is also an array data type. So just what are these arrays and what are they used for? Well, arrays are actually objects that hold multiple data of the same type together. So it's very useful in solving problems involving many variables, as it can store the same type of data within itself. All right, so I'll tell you what, let me just show you an example. All right. So let's say that you store the names, ages, and addresses of employees in a company in a database. This is where you keep all of this information. So consider that there are perhaps 1,000 workers working in this company. So in other words, there's going to be 1,000 names, 1,000 ages, addresses, all registered in the database. All right, so 1,000 is just a small round number, but it's huge. Okay. So let's say that you want to know the name of all the different workers. In this case, you could create a variable that you will pass each name into and then act on these variables. What's that going to do? Well, first of all, it involves a lot of work. It's actually quite difficult because in this case, you would need to create 1,000 variables. So that's why, in this case, we would use an array. In other words, instead of creating 1,000 variables, we could create one array and get the names of 1,000 workers from the database. Does that make it a little clearer? So now let's see how we can actually create an array. So first of all, we do want to determine what are we going to call this array. And we specify the elements of our array using the arrayOf method. So if you examine the example here, we've got an array called age. This array has 7 elements of integer data type. So each element in an array is also represented by an index. In other words, The first element of the array is actually the element whose index number is 0. The fifth element, well, of course it's an awesome movie, but the fifth element of the array is the element with the index number 4. So you follow? The last seventh element of the index is the element with the index number of 6. That is, the index number starts from 0. The final index number is 1 less than the number of the elements of the array. All right? So that's enough of that information. Let's move on to Android Studio and practice it. You'll pick it up really quickly. So first I want to create a new Kotlin file. I'll just specify the name to be arrays. Okay, so now let's create the main method. Now we can create an array called age. So I'm typing var age equals. After typing array of, we can write the elements of the array in parentheses. So we also use commas to separate elements from each other. As you can see, we have an array here of 3 elements called age. Now this 0th index of this array has 1, okay? The first index has 2. The second index has 3. All right, so let's print these elements to the console. All right, S out and press enter. So we'll print the first element of the array. So I'll write the first element of the array equals between double quotation marks. After the plus sign, write the name of the array and write the age. Then I write the index number of the element that we want to show in the console, which in this case is 0, inside these square brackets. All right, so now let's print the second and third elements in a similar way. What I'll do is I'll copy and paste this line of code twice. And then we can break in and do some editing. So I'll write 1 inside the brackets. So that will be the second element of the array. In fact, to get the element of the array at any index, we can use the get method rather than writing it this way. So let me show you that real quick. In other words, after typing the name of the array, if you write .get, write the index number in parentheses, you can learn the elements of the array. So yeah, there's no difference between these two spellings, actually. You can use either one. So I'm also writing 2 here. So it'll be the third element of the array. All right, so now let's run our code. And there you go. You can see that we've printed all the elements of the array to the console. And that's good. So now let's create an array of the type string. So in here I'll just write var cars equals. After typing the array of, I'll write the elements of the array in parentheses. So let's first element be Mercedes. Now notice that I always write string expressions between double quotation marks. So we'll let the second element be BMW. And let's make the third element Opel. And now let's print these elements to the console. So for that, what I'll do is copy and paste the above methods here. And let's replace age with cars. Because, you know, our array is called cars. Now also, in order to not mix with the elements of the above arrays, I'm going to make a partition here. I will divide by using the dash in parentheses. All right? That looks good, so now we can run our code. There you see, my friends, we have printed the elements of the age array and the elements of the cars array to the console. So now we can look at some other operations that we can do in arrays. First of all, let's try to replace the third element of the cars array. So in other words, when we first created the array, we set the third element of the array as Opel. Now, we're going to try to make it Ford. So we're going to use the set method for this process. So after typing the name of the array, if you put a dot, you will see a number of options provided to us by the code editor. And when we write set here, it's going to ask us for two parameters. First parameter is the index number of the element that we want to change. The second parameter is the new value of the element. So, for the first parameter, I'll just type in 2 because the index number of this opal element is 2. And I write forward as the new value. So now let's print the elements of the array again. I'll copy the methods from here, paste them in here, and now let's run the code. And look at that, as you can see, the third element of the cars array was opal, and after changing it using the set method, it became forward. Now let's see, I also want to show you how we can find out the size of arrays. Sometimes you can develop some applications by retrieving data from the internet or, a database. And in these cases, you might not know the size of the arrays initially, and believe me, you do want to find out. So for this, we always use the size method. So I'll show you, if you write cars.size here, well, you can find out the size of the cars array. And now let's print it to the console. Cutting this out and putting it in parentheses, right? And before it, between double quotes, I write size of cars array. And I'll put the plus sign in to combine these two expressions. All right, so let's run the code. So as you see, we saw the number 3 on the console. So finally, I want to show you one more thing, and that is, so when you want to create an array using the array of method, the elements of the array can be of different data types. So we don't have to specify the elements of the array just as integers, or just as strings, or just doubles or something, right? So in other words, the types of elements in the array can be different. So I will reinforce this idea with an example. So here, look, I am going to create an array called cars and age. So after writing the array of method, I'll write Mercedes as the first element. I'll write 5 as the second element, opal as the third element, and 10 as the fourth element in parentheses. So now let's print the elements of this array onto the console. So I'm copying the print in methods here and pasting them here. I'm going to copy and paste one more time because the array consists of 4 elements. All right, so now let's organize our methods a little bit. So I'm typing fourth here, and I am now correcting the array's name to cars and age. Okay, so finally I'll write 3 here. Now let's run the code. Okay, so as you can see, we have printed the elements of the array to the console. So you see how just by doing it this way, you can also create an array using different types of data types. All right, so that's pretty cool, my friends. So far, we have learned how to create an array, how to access the elements of the array, how to change the element in any index, and how to find out the number of elements in the array itself. Just when you thought we were wrapping up, I do want to take you one step further. Now, I want you to notice that when we create an array, we have determined its elements from the very beginning. Well, what do you think? Could we add an element to an array that already exists? Or perhaps if we can, how do we do that? Well, let's have a look. So let's take, for example, the latest cars and age array that we created. So this is an array consisting of 4 elements. So why don't we try to add the 5th element to this array? If you haven't seen it, you've got to. Anyway, so first I'll write the name of the array. Now, if you remember when we were presented with a number of options after putting a dot, we just kind of went ahead with it, right? But I want you to see if you can just, well, just watch along with me or do it along with me, depending upon your skill level. So let's just scroll through and see if there's a method like add or put. So no, we can't actually see such a method. So what do you think? Could we do that with a set method? Well, let's try. All right, so after writing the set here, let's write the index number and the element that I will add in parentheses. Writing 4 as the index because, well, the index number of the 5th element will be 4. So let's write 20 as the 5th element. Now, if you want to, go ahead and run the application and test it out. But as you can see, you're going to get an error. So this error is called array index out of bounds exception. So try to exceed the limits of the array. But when we did that, we encountered an error. So what do you think we should do if we want to add an element to an array later and not encounter an error? In this case, we could use array lists. So in other words, it is possible to work a little bit more flexibly by using array lists. So why don't we just break here for just a short time and we'll learn about array lists in the next video. Cool? So I'll see you then. Array lists. So I'm sure you remember after we created the array, we couldn't add a new element to the array that we created. But there is a method for this. We need array lists. So why don't we just go ahead and have a look at how to create these array lists. So we can create the array list in 2 different ways, it turns out. Well, the first is very similar to the method that we created in the first or previous lesson here. All right, so after specifying the array name, we could write array list of on the right side of the equals. So we also need to specify the type of array here. We also need to write the array type between the chevrons. Right? So that's the first method. In the second method, after defining the name of the array, we write array list to the right of the equals. And again, we write the type of the array between the chevron sign. So the difference between these 2 methods is that in the first method, you can specify the elements of the array while you're defining the array, or you can add them later. But in the second method, you can add elements to the array only after having created the array. Okay? So in other words, here, the choice is up to you. You can choose any of these 2 methods depending on the application that you're going to make. So now let's see how we can add elements to array lists, since we're doing it right here. We can now use the add method for this. Of course, we could use the add method in 2 different ways. Full of options we have here. So the first method, we can just write the element that we want to add. In this case, it always adds the element that we want to add at the end of the array. In our example here, the last element of the index, that is the 3rd index numbered element, would be 20. Or we could specify the index number of the element that we will add, right? So in this case, we would need to write 2 parameters in parentheses. The first would be the index number, and the second is the element that we will add. And we can also delete any element from array lists. For this, we could use the remove method. Again, it's possible to use the remove method in 2 different ways. So in the first method, we can write the element itself. In the second method, we can remove the element from the array by specifying its index number. Alright, so that's all you need to know about array lists. Why don't we go ahead and move on over to Android Studio and put it into practice. So I just want to create a new Kotlin file. And here I'll specify the name of this file to be array list. Now let's create our main method. So first I will create an array list of type integer. I'm writing var age equals array list. We'll also specify the type of array between the chevron marks here. So here I'll write int, and finally I'll put in parentheses. So we've defined an array list named age and type integer. Now let's create the elements of this array. So on the next line, I will write age.add. I write 10 in parentheses. And just by doing that, we added an element to the array list named age. Now let's add the second element. So this time I'm going to add the index number by specifying it. So I'm writing age.add, and I'll write 1 in parentheses. So this represents the index number. Now, since of course the number 10 we just added is the first element, the index number was 0. This will be the second element, so the index number must be 1. Now, let's write the value of the second element. So I'm typing 15 in here, and thus we have determined the first two elements of the array list named age. So why don't we go ahead and add one more element and print these elements to the console. So I'm writing in age.add. I'll write 20 in parentheses. Now let's print these elements to the console. So I'll type out and press enter. And if you remember, this method was creating the print in method quite quickly. So I'm writing the first element of age array list in double quotation marks inside the parentheses. And after typing the plus sign, I'll write age and open square brackets. I'll write 0 here. So in other words, we print the element of the age array with the 0 index number to the console. Now, I can copy and paste this line twice. So I'll type second here. I'll write third here. Cool, so now let's print the second and third elements. Now, here I want to show you something a little different writing styles, okay? So to print the second element of the console, I'll write age.get, and I write 1 in parentheses. And there's really no difference between this type of writing and the way that we're going to write it in the next line. You can use both. So now let's print the third element to the console. But here I want to talk about a writing style that I haven't yet mentioned. I'm going to show you how to write any line of code in a string expression. Now, if you've noticed, whatever we write inside the double quotation marks here looks exactly the same in the console. So you could say that it's not detected to be code. So if I cut the age2 expression here and write it in double quotes here, it will appear exactly like this on the console screen. So we wouldn't be able to learn the third element of the array. So what could we do for this expression so that it would be perceived as code? You know? Take a guess. Or no, that's why you're taking this course. Okay, well, I'll continue. What would happen if you put a $sign at the beginning of an expression that you want to be treated as a code in double quotation marks? And then enclose that expression in curly brackets. The expression after the $sign will be treated as code. Now, we don't use this spelling very often. It is useful to know. So, now let's run and test our code. So as you can see, we've printed 3 elements of the age array list to the console. Now, if you want to use a remove method, I wonder if you remember, we could remove any element of the array from the array list with a remove method. Yep. For example, let's just remove the second element of the array 15 from the array. So for this, I'll write age.remove. And if you use the remove method, you must directly write the element itself in parentheses. If you use the remove at method, then you must write the index number of the array you want to remove in parentheses. So I'm using the remove method right now. You can go and test the other method yourself, but I want to show you this. So write 15 in parentheses. Of course, when we delete the second element of the array from the array, the third element of the array, 20, will now become the second element of the array. So now, let's first print the size of the array to the console. So for this, I can write age.size in parentheses. Now let's print the first and second elements of the array. For this, I can copy and paste the above lines of code here. Now also, before running the code, let's convert these lines of code to the comment line. All right, so now we can run the code. And we should be able to see the numbers 2, 10, and 20 on the console. And as you can see, we have printed the size of the array, its first and second elements, right here to the console. So now, let's try this. We'll create an array using the ArrayListOf statement. And this time, we're going to create an array of type string. So I'm writing var cars equals array list of. The type of array will be string. And now we can specify the first two elements of the array here. So I'll write opal in parentheses as the first element. Second element, I'm going to write BMW. Now we can add the third element of the array using the add method. So here I'll write cars.add, I'll write Ford in parentheses. Now let's print the elements of the array to the console. So for this, I'll copy and paste the lines of code that I wrote above. And I should write cars instead of age here, because the name of our array is cars. Good catch. Finally, let's run and test our code. So as you can see, we printed Opel, BMW, and Ford on the console. And as you can see, guys, we can create an array list using both methods, right? That's cool. Now, I do want to show you one more thing, and then we'll wrap this lesson out, okay? So if you remember, in our array lesson, we created an array containing both string and integer expressions. And yes, this is also possible with array lists, my friends. So in other words, there may be different data types in the array that you want to create. Totally doable. But for this, my friends, you will need to define the type of the array as any. All right, so let me just show you a quick example. So here I'm writing var mymix array list equals. So after writing an array list, I set the type of the array to any. Now let's add an element to the array. Let the first element be of type string. So here I write mymix array list.add. I write Ford in parentheses. Let the second element be of the type integer. So I write mymix array list.add. I write 5 in parentheses. And we'll make the third element be of the type double. I'll write mymix array list.add, writing 2.5 in parentheses. And let's make the fourth element be of the type boolean. So I'll write mymix array list.add. I write false in parentheses. Now the fifth and final element will be of the type char. So I'll write mymix array list.add. I write k in single quotes in parentheses. So let's quickly print these statements to the console and see what we get. So I'm writing my mix array list square bracket 0 inside the bracket. Now let's copy this line and paste it 4 times. Now let's edit inside the square bracket. Finally, all right, 4. All right, so now let's run and test our code. And as you can see, we have printed the elements of the array list, which consists of different data types, right here to the console. All right, my friends, so that's how you use array lists. I'll tell you, we're going to be using array lists a lot, just a heads up, when we're doing our Android applications, so get used to it, and hopefully you get the logic. Of course, we're only showing you just the bare bones of it. So yeah, I might have heard a couple of snores out there, not sure. But when you start developing your Android apps using this information you've learned, oh boy, you're going to see how it makes it such a joy. Truly. All right, so just be a little patient in the beginning and learn it all, and we'll just have a short break here. I want to see you in the next lesson, which starts in the next video. See you then. Types from the collections class. Actually, you're going to think that it's used a lot like array lists. There is one very important difference. In array lists, you can use the same element more than once in the array. But in sets, only one of the same element is stored. So even if you try to add the same element more than once, in fact, if you notice in our example here, the array that we created using the array list of has 4 elements, and the number 2, it's used twice. So in this case, when we print the size of the array to the console, we get the number 4, and we can see the last element of the array is 2. When we create the same array using the set of, well, we get the size of the array to be 3, and we can see the last element of the array as 3. See? So in other words, only one of the 2 elements written twice is taken into account. The other element is not even noticed. So if you want to, let's go ahead and open up Android Studio and have a little practice. So first I want to create a new Kotlin file. And I'll make the name of this file to be collections set. Alright, so we'll create our main method. And first I will create an array using the array list of. So I'm writing var my set array. I'm writing equal array list of, and I'll write any as a type of array, because this array will consist of different types of elements. So let's let the first element be Kotlin, the type string. Second element, let's make it 2 of the type integer. And we'll make the third element 2.5 of the type double. And we'll make the fourth element k type char. Now, of course, we've got to have a 5th element, and this will be true of the type boolean. So now let's use the Kotlin element of the string type once more. All right, so in other words, we're going to let the 6th element of the array be Kotlin of the type string. Now I will print 2 different values to the console. So the first one will be the size of the array. So here I'll type s out and press enter. So I write my set array.size in parentheses. Now if you remember, we were able to learn the size of the arrays using the size method. Let's print the last element of the array. So for this I want to show you a different method. Here, so after typing s out and pressing enter, I'll just write my set array in parentheses. I write .last. The last method allows us to access the last element of the array. Alright, so let's run our code now. We should see the number 6 and a Kotlin expression in the console. And what do you know? Here in the console, observe the size of the array, it's 6, and the last element of the array is column. So in other words, we can add the same element more than once to the array using the array list of. So now let's create the same array using set of. So I'm going to copy and paste the same code that I wrote. And now let's turn these lines of code into the comment. So here I'm just going to write set of instead of array list of. And after typing set, I choose the set of expression here, and to replace the set of with the array list of expression here. We can just press the tab key instead of enter on the keyboard. See how that works? So we can easily write set of instead of array list of. All right, so now let's run our code now. We should see 5 and true in the console, and as you can see, although we defined 6 elements in the array, we observe the size of the array to be 5 in the console. And of course, the last element in the array is the true expression, not colon. Because even if we use the same element more than once in the arrays we create using set of, this gets ignored. All right, so that is how you can use set of collection. All right, so what we'll do is have a short break here, and in our next lesson we're going to learn about the map collection. All right, so I'll see you on the other side. This lesson we're going to learn the map. The feature that distinguishes map from other collections is that we can store elements in the array as key value pairs. Oh, yeah. So let's examine our example on the screen. So after specifying the name of the array, we write map of to the right of the equal sign. Between the chevron marks, we need to write 2 different data types. The first data type will be the type of key represents the element we will add to the array. And the second data type will be the type of element that we want to add to the array. So in our example here, the key's type is string, the element's type is integer. All right, so we now need to write the key and value parameters within parentheses. So in this example, we've got 2 elements. The key of the first element is David, its value is 20. The key of the second element is Ronaldo, and that value would be 25. So now let's see how to print the elements of an array created with map of to the console. So in our example, to print the value 20 to the console, we will need to use the David key. And of course, similarly, to print the value 25 to the screen, we'll need to use the Ronaldo key. So now that you have the lowdown about map, why don't we open up Android Studio and practice it a little bit. So first, I'll create a Kotlin file, brand new, specify the name, collections map. So now let's create the main method. So I set the name of the array to be age, write the map of. Between the chevron marks, I must first write the key's data type. So here I'm writing string. So now I've got to determine the data type of the element that I will add to the array. So here I can write int. Of course, you can specify any data type that you want here. Now let's try to add the elements of the array inside the parentheses. David will be the key of the first element. David's age will be 20. We associate the key and value pair with each other using the to statement. All right? So this is how you can store people's ages, just like this example. You specify contact names as keys. You can also specify people's ages as values. So now let's add the second element. So I'm typing Ronaldo is the key, and Ronaldo's age will be 25. Okay, so we've added the ages of David and Ronaldo to the array as a key value pair. Now, let's print these elements to the console. I'll type as out and press enter. I'll write the age of David in parentheses between double quotes. After I put the plus sign in, I type age and open square brackets. We should write a key here as well. That's why I'm writing David here as a string expression. Now let's print Ronaldo's age on the console. So I can copy and paste this line of code. I'm typing Ronaldo here. And I'm correcting the key here to Ronaldo. Alright, so now let's run our code. Alright, so as you can see, we have printed the ages of David and Ronaldo right here to the console. Alright, my friends, so that's how map works. But I do want to talk to you about one more thing. Notice that we added the elements of the array while defining the array. So, can we add an element to the array later, or can we remove any element of the array from the array? Let's have a look at it now. So, when I type age.add or age.put here, no method appears, because set and map collections are also divided by mutable and immutable, right? The map that we use here is actually an immutable collection. So that is, you have to specify the elements of the array at the beginning. And then after you create the array, you cannot make any changes to the array. If you do want to make changes to the array later, well, you really ought to prefer mutable collections. Okay. So here, I want to show you an example. So I'll just copy the same code that I wrote and pasting it here. I'll change the name of the directory to mutable age. Also, we should write mutable map of instead of map of here. So now after typing mutable, I'll select mutable map of from here and press the tab key on the keyboard. Now we can add a third element to this array, but this time I will do this addition in a bottom line. So I'm typing mutable age.put in here. In parentheses. Firstly, we will write the key and then the element. So I'm writing a Buffon. No, it's not a French name. But anyway, Buffon's age here will be 30. So let's print this to the console, see what we get. So I'm copying and pasting the print method here. I'm writing Buffon here, and again I'll write Buffon as the key. Now before running the code, let's put a string expression at the beginning of both outputs. So here, I'll write immutable map of. I can copy this and paste it here. And then here I'll write mutable map of. Alright, so now let's run our code. Cool, so as you can see, we got the age of Buffon, which we added later to the mutable age array as null in the console. Because when printing Buffon's age, we use the array named age again. But we have to write the mutable age array here. Alright, you follow? So let's fix this right now. Okay, so we can now run our codes. And as you can see, we have printed the element we added later to the mutable age array to the console. So you can also print to the console using the get method. So for this, you must write get here. And you must also write the key in parentheses. All right, so let's run this code. Now you can also run your code by pressing the green triangle here. Have you done that yet? And as you can see, there's no difference between the two methods. Same operations we apply to the set of, which we learned in the previous lesson. All right, what do you think of that, my friend? So we've learned quite a bit about arrays and collections, but before we wrap this lesson, I would like to mention one more thing. I want you to notice that we have used a print method for each element while printing the elements of all the arrays that we have created so far to the console. So what if our array consists of 1,000 elements? Should we write 1,000 print methods? Now, have you been thinking ahead? I think perhaps some of you have already posed this question in your head. So let me just answer. No, of course not. In Kotlin, there is a way to make this process easier. Loops. Yeah, so we can print elements of an array to the console very simply just by using loops. Now, before we jump into loops, I do want to give you some intel about operators first, okay? And then we'll learn about loops. So we're gonna break here. See you in the next video. We'll learn about arithmetic operators in the Kotlin programming language. So Kotlin provides operators that perform addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and remainder. So these are basic mathematical operations that you know and love, right? Plus is the additive operator. It adds to operand. Minus is subtraction operator. It subtracts right operand from the left. Asterisk is the multiplication operator. It multiplies two operand. Forward slash is the division operator. It divides left operand by the right one. Type of division result is float by default. Percent is the remainder operator. So this symbol might look new to you. It divides one operand by another, and it returns the remainder as its result. All right, so let's dive in a little bit deeper to understand these arithmetic operators with some examples. So we'll open up Android Studio. First, I'm going to create a new Kotlin file. Right-click on the package name, select the New Kotlin File option. Now, after selecting the file option here, I'm going to determine the file name to be arithmetic operators. Cool, so I'll hit enter. So now I've got to create the main method. Right, main, select the main option here, hit enter. So this main method has been created. So now I've got to declare three variables with double types. First, number 1, and assign 8.4. Second, number 2, assign 4.2. Last, result with initial value 0.0. So first, assign number 1 plus number 2 to the variable result. And then let's show the result value by using the print in method. Inside the double quotation marks, I'll write number 1 plus number 2 after the plus sign. I write the result. The plus sign we use here, the plus sign we use to add number 1 and number 2, you see how they're different from each other. Here we use the plus sign to concatenate two different string expressions, like I mentioned earlier in our previous lesson. So here's to mathematically sum two different values. Now we may run the program after all these operations. So let's copy the code, change the operator with the subtraction operator. I'll put the minus sign in here, and change the operator in the print method with the minus sign in here too. Right. Okay, so let's make changes for multiplication. So I'll put in an asterisk in here, and I'll put the asterisk sign here. And we can make changes for division. So I'll put the division sign here, put the division sign here. And then finally, why don't we make changes again for the remainder operator? All right, so that's all for now. Let's run the code, and let's watch the console. Number 1 plus number 2 equals 12.6. Number 1 minus number 2 equals 4.2. Number 1 multiplied by number 2 equals 35.28. Number 1 divided by number 2 equals 2.0. Number 1% number 2 equals 0.0. So the remainder is 0. All right, so there you have it, my friends. Arithmetic operators used in Kotlin work out to be just like that. That's all. So we'll take a short break here, and then in the next video, we're going to learn about assignment operators. All right. Lesson, we're going to talk about the unary operator. The unary operators require only one operand. So they perform various operations, such as incrementing and de-incrementing a value by 1, negating an expression, or inverting the value of a Boolean. You can see how important that would be. So let's have a look at these operations, shall we? Well, there's the plus. So this is the unary plus operator. Now it's used for giving positive values, but it's only used when deliberately converting a negative value to a positive. And this is the unary minus operator, and it's used for negating the values, double negatives, So, the increment operator, a plus plus, it increments the value by 1. Minus minus, the decrement operator, it decrements the value by 1. And the exclamation mark. So this is a logical complement operator. It inverts the value of a Boolean. So why don't I show you a few examples of unary operators in Android Studio, and you'll see how useful they really are. So first off, I want to create a new Kotlin file. So I'll right-click on the package name and select the new Kotlin file option. After selecting the file option here, I just determine the file name as unary operator, hit enter. Okay, so now I've got to create the main method. Write main and select the main A option here, hit enter, and that way the main method gets created. Alright, so why don't we start the code? Let's declare two variables. First off, a number with double type and assign 7.6. Second is check with Boolean type and assign true. And now in the first print method, we're going to use the unary plus operator. So let's copy the print method and paste it 4 times. And for the second print method, we can use the unary minus operator. Third print method, we'll use the increment operator. Fourth print method, we'll use the decrement operator. And for the last print method, we'll use the logical complement operator. Alright, so that's that. Let's run the code. Now remember, the value of the number variable was 7.6. So what do you see in the console? Plus number equals 7.6, so there's no change. Minus number equals minus 7.6, so it inverts the sign of a number variable. Plus plus number equals 8.6, so it has incremented the value by 1. Minus minus number equals 7.6, decrements the value by 1. Not is check equals false. So the first value of is check was true, remember? So this inverts the value of a Boolean. Now in Kotlin, we can also use a plus plus and minus minus operator as both prefix and suffix. However, there is a significant difference while using increment and decrement operators for prefixes and suffixes. So let me just show you by example. So I want to declare a variable result with the double type and assign 4.7 to it. Now in the first print method, we use the increment operator as a suffix and write result plus plus. And in the second method, we'll write the result. And for the third method, let's use the increment operator as a prefix and write plus plus result. And for the last print method, we'll write only the result again. Alright, so that's all of that. Let's run the code and see the results in the console. See, so when the first print is executed, the original value is evaluated first. The result is increased only after that. First, the result variable, that is 4.7, printed to the console. And afterwards, increased the result value. So we got 4.7 as an output. Also, the result value is 5.7 now. So when the second print gets executed, the increased value, 5.7, is printed. However, when the third print is executed, the result is increased by 1 first, before it's printed on the console, yeah? So the value of 5.7 increases by 1, and the new value of the result variable becomes 6.7. You follow? So then the value of the result variable is printed to the console like that. And of course, when the last print is executed, 6.7 gets printed. All right, so very quickly and very simply, those are the unary operators that we use in Kotlin. So we'll take a short break here, and in the next video, we're going to learn about equality and relational operators. Okay, so I'll see you then. Hello, my friends. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about the equality and relational operators. So the equality and relational operators determine if one operand is greater than, less than, equal to, or not equal to another operand, right? So let's have a look at how they work. Equal, equal. So this operator checks to see if the values of two operands are equal or not. If yes, then the condition becomes true. Here is the exclamation mark and equal. So this operator checks to see if the values of two operands are equal or not, and if the values are not equal, then the condition becomes true. Greater than sign. So this operator will check to see if the value of the left operand is greater than the value of the right operand, and if yes, then the condition becomes true. And the less than sign, so this operator checks if the value of the left operand is less than the value of the right operand, and then if yes, the condition becomes true. Now here's the greater than or equal sign. So this operator checks to see if the value of the left operand is greater than or equal to the value of the right operand, and if yes, then the condition becomes true. And less than or equals, well, this operator checks if the value of the left operand is less than or equal to the value of the right operand, and if yes, then the condition becomes true. Alright, so that's the basic outlay. Why don't we set up some examples using equality and relational operators in Android Studio. So what do we first do? Create a new Kotlin file. So I'll right-click on the package name, select the new Kotlin file option. After selecting the file option here, I'll determine the file name. And I'm going to call it equality operators. So I'll hit enter. And now I create the main method. So I write main, select the main A option here, and hit enter. All right, so there's our main method created. Alrighty then, let's start to code. So let's declare two variables with int type. Firstly, a and assign 2. Second, b and assign 5. So the first print method, we use the equal to operator, a equal to b. Let's copy the print. And then paste it 5 times. Okay, so in the second print method, we can use the not equal to operator in the parenthesis, a not equal to b. Third print method, we'll use the greater than operator, a greater than b. In the fourth print method, we use the greater than or equal to operator, a greater or equal to b. In the fifth print method, we'll use the less than operator, a less than b. In the last print method, we'll use the less than or equal to operator, a less than or equal to b. All right, so that wraps that. So let's run the code and see what we get on the console. A equal to b is evaluated false. A not equal to b is evaluated to true. A greater than b is evaluated false. A greater than or equal to b is evaluated to false. A less than b is evaluated to true. A less than or equal to b is evaluated to true. So let's change the value of a variable a to 5. So now a equals 5 and b equals 5. Why don't we run the code again and compare the results? A equal to b, evaluated to be true. A not equal to b, evaluated to false. A greater than b, evaluated to false. A greater than or equal to b, evaluated to true. A less than b is evaluated to false. A less than or equal to b is evaluated to true. All right, so what do you think now, my friends? That is equality and relational operators that we use in Kotlin. All right, so before we play around with that anymore, I want to take a short break because in our next video, we're going to talk about conditional operators. All right, so I'll see you then. Now it's time to talk about the conditional operator. So conditional operators are used, of course, for checking multiple conditions together. So let's try to understand conditional operators and how they function in Kotlin. So the conditional and operator. This operator is represented by the symbol double ampersand. All right. So in this operation, the result is true if both operands are true. Now, this operator doesn't check the second condition if the first condition is false. Makes sense, right? So it only checks the second condition if the first one is true. Then we have conditional OR operator. So this operator is represented by this symbol. It's called a double pipe. So in this operation, the result is true if either of the operands happen to be true. So this operator doesn't check the second condition if the first condition is true. It checks the second condition only if the first one is false. All right, so why don't we do some examples with conditional operators in Android Studio, and you'll see how we can use them to our benefit. All right, so you recognize this. I'll first create a new Kotlin file. Right-click on the package name, select the new Kotlin file option. After selecting the file option here, I'll determine the file name, and let's call it conditional operators. Enter key, and now I must create the main method. So I'll write main. Select the main A option here, and hit enter. And that creates our main method. Okay, so let's start to code. We'll declare 3 variables with input type. Firstly, number 1, assign 5. Second, number 2, and assign 8. And last, number 3, and assign 12. Okay, so let's declare a variable result with a Boolean type. The default value for a Boolean will be false. So here we're going to use the conditional AND operator and assign the result to the variable result. So if number 1 is greater than number 2 and number 3 is greater than number 1, then the result is true, else the result is false. So in order to get the result true in the conditional AND operator, all Boolean expressions must be true. Sorry, I didn't mean to shout. All right, so let's print the result value by using the print method. All right, so let's run the code. So you can see in the console the result equals false because number 1 is not greater than number 2. Okay, so we use the conditional OR operator and assign the result to the variable result. If number 1 is greater than number 2 or number 3 is greater than number 2, then the result is true, else the result is false. So in order to get the result true in the conditional OR operator, well, at least one expression must be true. Okay, so now let's run the code. And you see it in the console, the result equals true because number 3 is greater than number 2. All right, so that's how you use conditional operators in Kotlin. So we'll take a short break here, and then in the next video, we're going to deal with operator precedence. Yes, it just gets deeper, folks, but it gets a whole lot more fun too. So I'll see you in the next one. Run the code. And as you can see, the result. Is 13, not 28. Oh. Yeah, because the precedence of the multiplication operator is higher than the additive operator. See, I'm not fooling around. So here, multiplication. multiplication is performed before adding, and that means the result value is 13. All right, so if you did see that one coming, let's do another example. So let's assign in the parentheses 5 plus 2 and multiply 4 to the variable result. Copy the print method and run the code. Now the result's 28. So here the expression enclosed in parentheses is evaluated first, just like I promised. And you see that the multiplication is done. Okay, so first 5 plus 2 equals 7 is done, and 7 is then multiplied by 4, and the result equals 28. Now, you ready for a new example with unary operator precedence? Yeah, so let's declare 4 variables with an integer type. First, x, assign 8. Secondly, y, assign 4. Third, z, assign 2. And the last, sum, assign 0. So let's assign x plus minus minus y plus minus minus z to the variable sum. And we'll copy the print method. Cool, so now let's run the code. And as you see, the result is 12 because the operator precedence of the unary operator is higher than the additive operator. Things to keep in mind, eh? Yeah, you got room in there, don't worry. All right, so the operator precedence used in Kotlin works like this all the time. So we'll take a short break here, and next time we're going to talk about the range 2 operator. So I'll see you in the next video. Operator precedence. It really is important, though, to know Kotlin interprets the symbols that you use in order to perform specific operations, and in what order it's going to interpret them. All right, otherwise we could just write an application with one result in mind and receive an entirely different result. All right, so as you can see in the table, the priority column is most important because it defines the strict order which Kotlin interprets the symbols displayed in the operator column, okay? Let me highlight, strict order. Anyway, an operator higher in the table always takes precedence over an operator that's lower in the table. Now, there is a very important point in this part. If you want to change the order in which an expression is evaluated, you'll have to use parentheses. So in fact, any part of an expression enclosed in parentheses is evaluated first. Ah, you knew there was a trick waiting for you. All right, so let's make a few examples with conditional operators in Android Studio. So first I want to create a new Kotlin file, so I'll right-click on the package name, select the new Kotlin file option. After selecting the file option here, I'll name the file and we'll call it operator precedence. So after I hit the enter key, now I've got to create the main method. I'll write main, select main A option here, hit enter. Okay, so there's our main method. So here I'm going to declare a variable result with integer type. And assign 5 plus 2 multiply 4. Okay, so let's print the result value by using the print method. All right. We're going to talk about the range 2 method and the in operator that gets used with this method. All right, so we're starting to have a little fun with Kotlin. And this range2 method is used for easy identification of numbers or characters within a specified range. For example, instead of making 10 different definitions for numbers from 1 to 10, we could make a single definition using the range2 method. Or, instead of making separate definitions for all letters from the letter A to the letter Z, we could do this with a single definition just by using the range2 method. Okay, so why don't we have a look at the range2 statement. So, as with most things, there's a couple of different ways that we can use the range2 method. So in the first case, after defining the variable, we must write the initial value of the range that we're going to define. Makes sense? Then, we have to use the range2 method. And then finally, we must write the ending value of the range that we are defining in parentheses. Now for the second case, we'll need to use two dots next to each other instead of the range2 method. But of course, you can use either of these two methods. They both are very handy and they both work the same way. Well, they work in different ways, but you'll see what I mean. All right, so remember earlier I mentioned the in operator? So the in operator is also used with a range2 method. But by using the in operator, you can find out if a desired value is in the range that you specify. So, if you have a look at the example here, we pass all letters from A to Z into the variable named myCharRange, okay? Also pay attention to this. The letters A and Z are included in this range. All right. Okay, so let's find out if the letter K is in this range just by using the in operator. So if the letter K exists in this range, the variable myChar is true. If not, it'll be false. All right, so that's the quick and dirty of the range2 operation. So let's just move on to Android Studio and you'll see how to use it in practice. So first, I'll create a Kotlin file. Right-click on the package name, select the new Kotlin file option. And after selecting the file option here, I'll determine the file name. We're going to call it range. After hitting the enter key, I've got to create the main method. So I'll write main, select the main A option here, hit enter, and thusly, the main method gets created. Okay, so let's create a variable called myCharRange. Let's transfer the letters from the letter A to the letter J to this variable. So I'll write A between single quotation marks. So for this example, I'm going to use the range2 method. And you can do this by using two dots next to each other if you want. I'm going to write J in parentheses, again in single quotation marks. Now, of course, the reason we use single quotes here is because the char data type likes it that way. That's the way you use the char data type. What are you looking at me for? So if you are going to perform an integer data type operation, for example, if you're going to transfer a range from 1 to 10, for instance, you do not need to use single quotes. You must write 1 for the start value and 10 for the end value. All right? Yeah, you get it? So now let's define a variable called myChar. So what we're going to do is check to see if the letter K is in the myCharRange variable that we defined in the previous line. So for this, we need to use the in operator. So I'm typing K in myCharRange here. The variable myChar will be true if this range contains the letter K, otherwise false. Now let's print the myChar variable to the console. I type S out, press enter, and I'll write myCharRange has K in parentheses between double quotes. And myChar after the plus sign. Now let's run the code. Expected result would be seeing our value false in the console. And there you have it. There is the value false in the console. Because there is no letter K between the letters A through J, right? Now let's change the ending value of the range and make it k. And run the code again. Okay, so as you see, there is now a true value on the console. Right, so that is how the range2 method and using the in operator get used in Kotlin. Now, I didn't show you in this particular example, but we will be using them mostly in the for loop operations. Well, we're not going to get to those until a little bit later, but in any event, you'll see how it actually reinforces your knowledge rapidly. All right, so we're going to take a short break here. I want to see you in the next video because we've got a lot to do. Yeah, because now the fun's going to begin. So I'll see you in the next video.